There are moments when heaven grows silent, not because God has abandoned you, but because He is watching to see if you will remember the warning He already placed inside your spirit. There are doors you keep trying to force open, while God keeps shutting them for your protection. There are people you keep chasing, while God keeps removing them, because they were sent to drain your peace, your purpose, and your destiny. My child, listen carefully, because this message is not casual. This is not coincidence. This is not something you stumbled upon by accident. God says, I warned you before the pain came. I whispered before the storm arrived. I shook your spirit before the betrayal happened. I sent signs before the destruction reached your house. You prayed for discernment, but when discernment exposed the truth, you called it fear. You prayed for clarity, but when clarity revealed who was against you, you tried to hold on to them anyway. God says there are some battles in your life that were never meant to destroy you. They were meant to wake you up. The heartbreak woke you up. The disappointment woke you up. The sleepless nights woke you up. The rejection woke you up. Because sometimes God allows the earth beneath your feet to shake so you will finally stop building your life on things that cannot save you. God says, my child, I warned you because I love you. The warning was mercy. The delay was mercy. The closed door was mercy. The confusion you felt around certain people was mercy. The discomfort in your spirit was mercy. Heaven was trying to protect you from what your emotions kept trying to embrace. Some of you are asking God why things fell apart, but God is asking you why you ignored the warning signs He already showed you. Why did you continue walking toward darkness after He already revealed the trap? Why did you keep entertaining voices that weakened your faith? Why did you keep returning to places that poisoned your spirit? The enemy studies your weakness. The enemy watches the moments when you feel lonely, exhausted, forgotten, and wounded. That is why you must stop treating spiritual warfare like a small thing. Not every attack comes with obvious destruction. Sometimes the enemy enters through distraction, through compromise, through relationships that slowly pull you away from God, through habits that silence your prayer life, through temptations that seem harmless in the beginning, but later imprison your soul. God says, I warned you because I could see what was ahead, while you could only see what was in front of you. There are some people hearing this message right now who feel the conviction of God deep inside their chest. You know this word is for you because your spirit has been restless. You have felt a heaviness you could not explain. You smiled around people while your soul quietly screamed for help. God says, He has been calling your name in the middle of the night. He has been trying to pull you back before you lose yourself completely. The world offered you temporary comfort, but heaven is calling you toward eternal purpose. My child, stop running from the voice of correction. The correction of God is not punishment. It is protection. A loving father warns his children before danger arrives. If God did not care about you, He would leave you lost in your destruction. But the very fact that conviction still reaches your heart means His mercy is still chasing you. His grace is still standing at your door. His hand is still extended toward you, even after your mistakes, even after your rebellion, even after your delay. God says there are wolves disguised as friends around some of you. There are people smiling in your face, while secretly celebrating your weakness. Be careful who speaks into your spirit. Be careful who influences your decisions. Not everyone sent into your life was sent by God. Some people arrive carrying confusion, manipulation, jealousy, and spiritual darkness. This is why you cannot survive without discernment in this season. You cannot afford to ignore what God is revealing anymore. The next season of your life will require obedience greater than comfort. God is calling you higher, but elevation demands separation. Some habits must die. Some conversations must end. Some environments must be abandoned. You keep asking God for transformation, while refusing to let go of what is destroying you. But God says breakthrough cannot fully enter a life that continues to entertain bondage. There is urgency in this message, because time is moving quickly. God says many people are spiritually asleep, while the enemy quietly steals their peace, their calling, their identity, and their future. Wake up, my child. Wake up before compromise hardens your heart. Wake up before distraction steals your destiny. Wake up before temporary pleasures cost you permanent damage. The enemy wants your focus broken because a distracted believer becomes spiritually weak. But when you return to prayer, when you return to obedience, when you return to intimacy with God, chains begin to break. God says, I did not create you to live in fear, confusion, or defeat. You were called to walk in authority. You were called to carry light into dark places. You were called to overcome the attacks that once tried to bury you. But you cannot rise while continuing to ignore the warnings heaven keeps sending. There are moments in life when the Spirit of God tries to warn you long before the disaster arrives. But because the warning does not come with thunder or visible destruction, you ignore it. God says, My child, I spoke to you in the quiet places. I tried to pull your attention away from what was secretly sent to break you. Some of you felt the warning in your spirit weeks ago. You noticed the uneasiness. You sensed that something was wrong. You prayed, but deep down you continued, walking toward the very thing God was trying to protect you from. Heaven saw the trap, while you only saw the temporary pleasure, the temporary comfort, or the temporary attachment. God says there were people around you whose words sounded kind, but their intentions carried darkness. You kept asking yourself why you never felt peace around them, why your spirit felt drained after every conversation, why confusion entered your mind whenever they spoke into your life. That was not random. That was discernment, trying to wake you up. God does not always expose danger through visible signs. Sometimes He exposes danger through spiritual discomfort. The problem is that many people silence conviction because they are emotionally attached to what God is trying to remove. My child, the warning was mercy. The delay was mercy. The unanswered prayer was mercy. You cried because certain doors closed. But if heaven had allowed those doors to stay open, destruction would have entered your life in ways you could not survive. Some of you were angry because relationships ended unexpectedly. Opportunities disappeared suddenly, or plans fell apart without explanation. But God says, I could see what was ahead. I removed what would have destroyed your future. You were grieving over what left your life, while heaven was protecting your destiny. The enemy knows how to disguise danger in attractive forms. Not every attack looks evil in the beginning. Sometimes destruction arrives wearing the face of opportunity. Sometimes temptation arrives, disguised as comfort. Sometimes compromise enters through loneliness. That is why spiritual discernment is necessary in this season. You cannot survive by emotions alone. Feelings will mislead you when your spirit is weak. God says many of his children keep praying for protection, while continuing to ignore the warnings he already placed in their hearts. There were nights when you could not sleep because your spirit was troubled. There were moments when something inside you kept saying, walk away, but you stayed anyway. There were conversations that left your soul heavy, environments that slowly weakened your faith, and habits that began separating you from the presence of God. Heaven was speaking, but your flesh kept fighting against the truth. God says, my child, stop calling my warnings negativity. Stop ignoring conviction, because it challenges your comfort. Some people listening to this message have become spiritually exhausted because they keep resisting what God has been telling them for months. You know certain behaviors are damaging your soul, but you continue returning to them. You know certain people are leading you away from peace, but you continue giving them access to your life. You know certain environments are poisoning your spirit, but you keep staying there because leaving feels painful. God says obedience will sometimes hurt your emotions before it heals your future. The Father warns his children because he loves them. Correction is not rejection. Conviction is not condemnation. God is not exposing the danger to shame you. He is exposing it to save you. If he did not care, he would allow you to continue toward destruction without interruption. But every warning is evidence that heaven is still fighting for you. Every conviction is proof that God still has purpose for your life. There are attacks forming against many people right now. But the enemy's greatest weapon is distraction. If he cannot destroy you immediately, he will slowly weaken your prayer life, your focus, your discipline, and your relationship with God. He wants your spirit numb. He wants you too distracted to recognize danger. That is why you must guard your heart carefully in this season. Be careful what voices you entertain. Be careful what influences your mind daily. Be careful what you normalize in your life, because repeated compromise slowly hardens the soul. God says some of you ignored small warnings until the pain became impossible to ignore. The relationship became toxic. The anxiety became overwhelming. The emptiness became unbearable. The confusion became constant. But even now, heaven is still calling your name. Even now, God is still extending mercy toward you. He is telling you to stop walking toward what He already warned you about. Stop reopening doors He already closed. Stop chasing what keeps pulling you away from His presence. My child, there is a reason your spirit has been restless. There is a reason peace disappeared every time you tried forcing certain situations to work. There is a reason you keep hearing this message today. God is trying to wake you up before the storm fully arrives. He is trying to pull you back before compromise destroys your discernment completely. He is trying to rescue you before the enemy turns your weakness into captivity. God says, "My child, return to me before your soul becomes too exhausted to recognize my voice." There are many people walking through life, carrying hidden emptiness while pretending everything is fine. They smile in public while privately battling confusion, fear, anxiety, and spiritual dryness. They have allowed distractions, pain, toxic relationships, and compromise to slowly separate them from the presence of God. The danger is not always sudden destruction. Sometimes the danger is slowly drifting away from God without realizing how far you have fallen. The Father is calling His children back because He sees what the enemy is trying to do behind the scenes. The enemy wants you distracted, emotionally overwhelmed, spiritually weak, and disconnected from prayer. He understands that a believer without intimacy with God becomes vulnerable to confusion. That is why so many people feel lost right now. They have replaced the voice of God with the noise of the world. They spend more time feeding fear, comparison, lust, bitterness, and distraction than feeding their spirit with truth. God says, "You cannot heal while continuing to consume what poisons your soul." Some of you have been carrying guilt for too long. You made mistakes. You ignored God's warnings. You walked into situations that wounded your spirit. You allowed compromise to enter your life slowly. But God says His mercy is still reaching for you. The enemy wants you trapped in shame, because shame convinces people to run from God instead of running toward Him. But the Father is saying, "Come back to me." Not tomorrow. Not when life becomes easier. Not when you feel spiritually perfect. Come back now while His grace is still calling your name. There are people listening to this message who remember when their prayer life was strong. You remember when worship moved your spirit deeply. You remember when peace filled your heart. But little by little, distractions entered your life. You became consumed by stress, relationships, entertainment, money, pressure, heartbreak, or worldly desires. Slowly, your spiritual hunger faded. You stopped praying consistently. You stopped seeking God sincerely. You stopped guarding your heart carefully. God says, "My child, the enemy did not destroy you in one day. He weakened you little by little. The Father is warning you because there are battles ahead that cannot be fought with human strength alone. You need spiritual endurance. You need discernment. You need wisdom. You need closeness with God. Some people keep asking why they feel empty, but they have been starving their spirit for months. You cannot survive spiritually while neglecting prayer, obedience, and intimacy with God. The soul was never created to survive, separated from its Creator. God says there are some relationships in your life that must end if you are going to walk into the next season He prepared for you. Not everyone connected to you is assigned to your destiny. Some people are assigned to your distraction. Some people drain your peace, weaken your discipline, and pull you away from your purpose. You keep asking God for elevation while refusing to separate from what is keeping you spiritually bound. The next level of your calling requires obedience greater than your comfort. My child, stop normalizing the things that are killing your spirit. Stop excusing the habits that separate you from God's presence. Stop entertaining thoughts that fill your heart with fear and hopelessness. Heaven is calling you higher. God did not create you to remain trapped in cycles of compromise, addiction, confusion, or emotional bondage. He created you to walk in authority, peace, wisdom, and spiritual strength. But transformation requires surrender. You cannot fully receive healing while continuing to cling to the very things that wounded you. There are hidden battles many people are fighting in silence right now. Some are battling depression. Some are battling temptation. Some are battling loneliness so deep that they feel forgotten. Some are battling secret sins that slowly consume their peace. But God says darkness loses power when His children return to His presence. The enemy thrives in secrecy, isolation, and spiritual weakness. That is why the Father keeps calling you back into prayer, back into worship, back into truth. You may feel unworthy after everything you have done, but God's mercy is greater than your failure. His grace is greater than your past. The cross was never for perfect people. It was for broken people willing to surrender. God says, I am not asking you to fix yourself before coming to me. I am asking you to trust me enough to let me restore you. Heaven is not searching for flawless people. Heaven is searching for surrendered hearts. The time for spiritual sleep is over. God is shaking many people awake because the days ahead require strong faith, clear discernment, and complete dependence on Him. You cannot afford to stay distracted in this season. You cannot afford to ignore conviction anymore. You cannot afford to keep delaying obedience while your soul grows weaker. God is calling His children out of compromise and back into holiness, back into prayer, back into intimacy with Him, because breakthrough begins the moment surrender becomes complete.